I'm here about pickles for breakfast. I work at Hampton DeVille.
Huh. I used to work there. I left a few years back to create my own startup, and now I sell content back to you guys.
So you make pickles for breakfast?
No, they do.
They?
I'm sorry, I didn't want to gender the algorithm. Pickles for breakfast is made by a computer.
This video is sponsored by Mubi. Get a whole month free at mubi.com/skipintro. This is an episode of one of my favorite surrealist comedies, Corporate. In this episode, one of our main characters, Jake, finds out that the most successful show on his company's streaming platform is a kids show called Pickles for Breakfast, which is a very unsettling show.
Look out for the bad bird, for it will steal your pickle.
Yes, Mommy. If the bird steals the pickle, I'll kill it with a sickle.
This is weird.
In Jake's quest to confront the creators of the show for making such a sociopathic piece of content, he discovers that Pickles for Breakfast is created by Stravinsky, an artificial intelligence program that can create approximations of art at a massive scale for a fraction of the cost.
I can feed any kind of data into the algorithm. Music, art, animated kids' YouTube videos, and it'll generate its own approximation.
When Jake informs the CEO of his company, the not-so-subtly named Christian DeVille, DeVille has an epiphany and announces a new path forward for the company's content.
We'll use an algorithm to churn out hundreds of scripts a day at virtually no cost, and you'll all keep watching even though there are plenty of other better shows that people have recommended that you know you should check out. And sure, you'll all complain about how society tomorrow used to be better, but that anger will unite you, and so you'll keep watching, hoping it will end, begging for it to end, and then you'll all die.
And I think that this episode actually perfectly summarizes the state of media today, because in definitely unrelated real-life news, on May 1st, the Writers Guild of America went on strike. Among their demands are better pay, especially from streaming services like Hulu and Netflix, as median weeks worked plummet, and the percentage of writers working on minimum salaries has exploded. Minimum salaries account for 98% of staff writer jobs, 95% of story editor jobs, and now 49% of all writer jobs. In all, when adjusting for inflation, weekly pay has declined 23%. As Jake from Corporate so eloquently stated,
Which means artists won't have jobs anymore, so they won't be able to afford drugs.
in this writer strike, studio executives claim that it's not profitable to pay writers that much and have announced plans to write scripts with the AI ChatGPT and underpay other writers to punch those scripts up. Now, artificial intelligence is not the only issue at stake in these negotiations, although arguably it might be the most impactful in the long term. But this strike is going to change the fabric of TV reality without a doubt. I think that on the internet spaces, we often talk about trends as superhero movies are getting darker, superhero movies are fun again, superhero movies are dark and fun. But we rarely ever talk about how much labor disputes shape the art we consume, especially in TV, which is arguably the most reactive to these kinds of economic trends. And especially in a world where the lines between TV and reality are blurrier than ever, these labor disputes can be massively impactful, not just to content, but to the world around us. You could credibly make the argument that the 2007 writer's strike gave Donald Trump enough juice to run for president. Yeah, I'm serious. We'll get there. Today, I want to talk about the 2007 strike, how it changed TV forever, and look forward to this current one and see how it might do the same. Let's start by talking about how writers make money, and how the evolving business model of entertainment has totally changed that. They are paid for their time on the show, of course, but traditionally, they're also paid for reruns.
If I write an episode of television that re-airs over and over and over again, every time that episode re-airs, the content provider generates revenue, and a little piece of that revenue gets shared with everyone that contributed to the creation of it.
Okay, for the Gen Z people out there, reruns are when you didn't have every TV show and every episode at your fingertips, and sometimes you had to wait for a network to show that episode again later in the week, and you had to sit through the commercials. And they made a lot of money through that. I know it doesn't sound great, and maybe that's why that system is dying. But there are ramifications for this change. Now that streaming dominates the TV space, that revenue from rerun residuals has all but dried up. Streamers like Hulu and Netflix and HBO Max don't make their money primarily through ad sales, but instead through subscription fees. And the residuals for streaming are way lower.
I write for a show called Abbott Elementary that's on ABC, which is a traditional network, but the next day we're on Hulu, and a little bit after that we're on HBO Max and Disney Plus. So the amount for a re-air on the network is $13,500, and the amount that you're paid for that episode being on new media streaming is $700.
On top of that, streaming means fewer episodes per season. Instead of the traditional 20+ episodes in a season of Abbott Elementary or NCIS, streamers often opt for smaller 8 to 12 episode seasons, which means fewer opportunities at those residuals. People have this assumption that accomplished Hollywood writers are rich, or that once you achieve professional success, you'll be set for life. But that's not exactly true. For example, The Bear, which aired 8 episodes on Hulu, was a massive success.
Why are you fucking with me? Why are you fucking with me? Why are you fucking with me?
And even earned the Writers Guild Award for Best Comedy Writing.
Well, we did it. We finally answered the age-old question, does comedy have to be funny?
Yet, Alex O'Keefe, one of those award-winning writers, told The New Yorker that when the show won that award, he had a negative amount in his bank account, and he bought the tuxedo he wore to that award ceremony on credit. While working on the show, he had no heat in his apartment and wrote scripts at the public library. I know The Bear is about a business on the verge of economic collapse, but I don't think writers should have to go full method just to come up with that. The fight over these residuals is also why you're seeing tons of media companies scrubbing content from their libraries. They would rather pay the fine to reduce the value of their platform than to just pay writers.
Bottom line, what are you guys fighting for?
Compensation. It's not hard.
This kind of shortchanging writers is a bit of a pattern for media companies. Another one of the big issues at stake in this strike is the rampant use of what's called mini rooms. In a mini room, studios will hire a small number of writers to help a showrunner break a season of TV, which is super fancy industry talk for planning out a season of TV. I don't know why they don't just say that. A mini room is kind of like a test to see if a show could or should be picked up or renewed for a new season. It's really important work, but writers in mini rooms are paid minimum scale salaries, and if the show isn't picked up, mini room writers just spent 8 to 10 weeks on a project that went nowhere.
Writing is turning into a gig economy where instead of having a job that lasts for a year, you have to piece together 8 jobs that last for 6 weeks.
And even if the show is picked up, most mini room writers don't get picked up to write on the show, especially if the season only has 10 episodes or fewer. Now, like I mentioned, this is not the first time the Writers Guild has gone on strike. The last writer's strike started on November 5th, 2007 and lasted 100 days. If you're old enough to remember TV back then, first of all, I'm sorry for you. I'm right there with you. But more importantly, let's clear the air about some of the myths and rumors. There's a lot of misinformation out there about how the strike ruined your favorite TV show. It's frequently cited as having killed heroes, and to a lesser extent, cult favorites like Pushing Daisies. This is completely overblown. Reviews of Heroes' second season before the strike started on November 5th noted its lack of direction, and the show still ran for 2 more seasons after the strike. They could have fixed stuff. It just actually wasn't that good. Pushing Daisies wasn't canceled. It was renewed and then came back for a second season in 2008. And at the same time, the strike's positive effects on scripted TV are maybe underblown? Is that a word? Breaking Bad's first season was meant to see Jesse Pinkman die, but because the writer's strike shortened the season, the writers didn't get around to it. And over the break, they thought, hey, this Jesse kid maybe has something. Aaron Paul, maybe you're a good actor.
Yes, science!
The idea that the writer's strike ruined TV shows is really just industry talking points to get you to oppose the strike. Now, the biggest issue at stake in 2007 was about residuals for new media. This was back when Netflix was a company that sent out red envelopes instead of paying millions of dollars for transphobic comics. Nobody knew what it would become, but the hints were starting to emerge. Damon Lindelof, then showrunner of one of my favorite TV shows, Lost, don't come at me in the comments, described to The Hollywood Reporter getting an uh-oh feeling at the Apple Store in 2006 when his show was among the first shows to be rolled out on iTunes. In his words, people were downloading Lost and paying $1.99 an episode. I don't get compensated for this at all. Eventually, through the strike, the Writers Guild was able to carve out some residuals for streaming and internet content. And while it failed to see how that media would dominate the space 15 years later, that was a huge win. In instances where writers haven't gotten in on the ground floor, they've been shut out completely, as with reality TV, which has few labor protections for crew members. That lack of labor protection is part of the reason why, during the 2007 writer's strike, when Hollywood was ground to a halt, networks turned to reality TV, a cheap alternative. In early 2007, after season 6 of The Apprentice wrapped, it was on the bubble. Ratings had been on the decline, and when NBC announced their fall schedule, The Apprentice wasn't on it. In fact, talks between Trump and NBC on a new contract broke down in May, but suddenly, they reached an agreement in July, which is, coincidentally, right when the Writers Guild negotiations began. And not only was the show renewed, but a spin-off, The Celebrity Apprentice, was launched, reinvigorating interest in the dying franchise. That would last until Kevin Jonas tanked it and then gave us Donald Trump as president. Thanks a lot, Kevin Jonas, the worst Jonas.
Yes, okay.
Which is your favorite Jonas?
Nick.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, well.
No, Joe, I got love for you too, Joe.
Kevin, what about Kevin?
As Ben Silverman, then NBC chairman, recalled to The Hollywood Reporter, he positioned the network for the contingency of a writer's strike. I knew Biggest Loser could expand, I greenlit Phenomenon and American Gladiators. Then I came up with the idea of doing Celebrity Apprentice. I reached out to Mark Burnett, who said, "There's no way Donald will want to be around other celebrities. He has to be the biggest celebrity." And I said, actually, he's going to be the biggest celebrity because he's going to be the boss. I called up Trump and he agreed, and we relaunched to huge ratings. Great. Thanks for that, Ben Silverman. Thank you. And Donald Trump wasn't the only person to benefit from the writer's strike. In August 2007, staring down the possibility of a strike, NBC greenlit a non-scripted family sitcom on its subsidiary network E called Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
Don't you have a photo shoot tomorrow? Stop eating.
I think she has a little junk in the trunk.
See, when networks don't pay their writers, we all lose. Now, this is not to say that the writer's strike is bad because it made Trump president and Kim Kardashian queen? Although it is worth noting that both received a significant boost due to the greed of the entertainment industry's ruling class. Something that I'm sure would never be important ever again, say if one of them ran for political office.
I know you said earlier that you will not comment on the platforming of such atrocious disinformation, but I would. I think it was a profoundly irresponsible decision.
I don't know if I'm gonna make it through the next election. My point is that these labor disputes in entertainment do indeed have massive consequences, both in the media itself and in the culture we've created around that media. And that brings us all the way back to artificial intelligence.
Pickles for breakfast may terrify and confuse us, but future generations will look on it as genius. Oh, look. Stravinsky finished rendering 50 more episodes of Pickles for Breakfast.
Some have argued that AI can already do the job of a writer. Here's a Ben Shapiro tweet implying that, well, I'm not exactly sure what he's implying, but it seems like he means that writers are about to be replaced by AI because this scene is just so tasty. Which is exactly the kind of take you'd expect from a failed Hollywood screenwriter like Ben. Never forget that Ben Shapiro wanted to work in Hollywood, but sucked, and now he's a conservative ghoul. Every time technology has advanced, it's created a new revenue stream for the entertainment industry that writers have had to negotiate residuals for. It happened in 1960, when TV networks started airing films. It happened in 1973, when cable TV and cassette tapes entered the market. In the 1980s, it was the home video boom, and in 2007, it was internet content. And today, we're at the new frontier. The Writers Guild wants to ensure that artificial intelligence can't be used as the foundation for a script or to undermine working standards. They propose treating it as research material, in that writers cannot be asked to adapt AI-generated material or to work on AI-generated scripts to punch them up. Now, I think it's worth saying that AI cannot independently write good TV shows. At least, not yet. You see, art is about having a thought or feeling about the universe and sharing it with another person who might have also had that experience. It requires people on both ends to have lived experiences that lead to thoughts and emotions that drive them to express themselves and want to be seen by others through art. And at this point in time, that's just a structural problem for artificial intelligence. ChatGPT is really good at regurgitating information in a way that can pass the bar exam, for example, but is pretty lackluster in terms of its ability to write creatively. Or, as this writer sums it up, ChatGPT doesn't have childhood trauma. I even asked ChatGPT to write an appearance for me on the Joe Rogan Experience, where I would talk about propaganda. It got some basic stuff right, but it also thought that Grand Theft Auto was propaganda and left out some of the stuff that makes the Joe Rogan podcast, well, an experience.
This is sad.
Look at it. It's
I can't
burrowing
look at his
itself
eye.
into the body of
Oh
the
my
mouse.
God, take that off of the camera.
Bro, imagine.
Holy shit.
That's why you need to learn jujitsu.
What AI is really good at is creating content at a massive scale. This is stuff that approximates art, but is more or less phoned in. Could AI write their own Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind? No. Could it write an episode of Blue Bloods? Sure, I can probably do that with my eyes closed.
Beep boop. Woke mind virus. Beep boop. All lives matter.
My point is, there's a difference between art that's communicating something and content that's just there to be consumed. The problem is that content is far cheaper and more attractive to capital, and that leads us into why this whole thing is happening in the first place. Since the last strike in 2007, we've seen an absolutely staggering amount of consolidation in the media landscape. In 2011, Comcast bought NBC Universal. In 2017, Disney bought 21st Century Fox and then took over majority ownership of Hulu in 2019. Also in 2019, CBS and Viacom signed a blood pact and became the demonic Paramount Global. In 2021, AT&T ate Warner Media, and then in 2022, ate Discovery to become some kind of Cronenberg monster of corporate nonsense. With all of these mergers, we've seen content culled and mass layoffs as they try to cut costs for shareholders and make that good old stock graph go up, up, up.
What the hell happened here?
Oh, they laid off everyone at Hampton View except for me because I'm the one who really matters.
What do you do?
I design thumbnails. Yeah. It's the most important art form of the 21st century.
At the same time, we've seen massive players enter the entertainment industry without ever really needing to care about workers or writers. Apple and Amazon are both incredibly lucrative companies for whom media like film and TV are just tiny little things that they do for fun. Still, the entertainment industry has never been more profitable. While the business model has switched from ad sales to subscription fees, the industry is doing just fine. According to the Writers Guild, even excluding news and sports networks, entertainment profits were estimated to be more than $20 billion in 2021. That's profits, not revenue. That's profits. They made that much extra money on top of their costs. While the news has been flooded with reports of massive quarterly losses, a lot of that is simply due to the front-end investment that companies like Disney and Warner Media made in building their own streaming services from scratch. Netflix, who didn't have to build out that infrastructure, reported $5.6 billion in 2022 profits, and the conglomerates behind HBO Max and Disney Plus have announced to investors that they project profits from streaming as soon as 2024. Entertainment is not dying. All of those layoffs and content culling are not about trying to break even. They're about trying to make a bigger and bigger profit. These companies are not run by people who value art or even entertainment. They only value profit. Whether it's finding loopholes around paying writers' rooms or turning artificial intelligence into non-union scabs, the value of the actual product is really not that important to executives. Artificial intelligence might produce empty content that does not compare to an actual writer, but these companies are betting that they can cut costs that way and increase their margins in the short term, raising subscription fees, handing out huge bonuses for executives, and increasing stock value, where executives hold equity. They don't care if the end product is objectively worse, either artistically or for their consumers' mental health.
Then why can't I have a pickle?
Because pickles are a lunch side.
Pickle, pickle, pickle. I'm gonna kill you with my sickle.
The medium of television is constantly changing. It's almost unrecognizable from where it was back in 2007. That's not just the content, but the structure of how we consume that content. Over the past 2 decades, we've graduated from sitting in front of our TVs week by week, to renting box sets, to binging an entire season of Stranger Things from the moment it drops at midnight. That structure is defined by business models and labor disputes, and it changes the very nature of what kind of shows we get to see. And beyond that, what the Writers Guild is fighting for, a living wage from absolute behemoth super corporations that only eat shit and piss profits, is something we've been seeing all across the country in the past few years. At Starbucks, at Amazon, with rail workers. And the automation they're fighting against in the form of artificial intelligence puts them on the front lines of a fight that many of us might have to take up soon. There's nothing inherently wrong about technology like artificial intelligence, just like there was no inherent issue with the machines that replaced the handwork done by cloth manufacturers during the Industrial Revolution. The issue is when those things are used to undermine workers and destroy their economic security. The issue is when these companies use it to create a script that can be reworked as a loophole to justify paying a human writer less money for what might be even more extensive work. The issue is when businesses use it to keep workers in line because they can just replace you with a machine. And I find it hard to believe that these companies are going to care about workers or people or really anything other than profit. Television is about to change forever, and if that 2007 strike is any indication, the ramifications are going to be far greater than any of us could possibly imagine. In 15 years, I fully expect Pickles for president. We might be entering a long hiatus for TV and film. Of course, you should support the workers on strike and get involved in unionizing your own workplace if you're really nasty. But with American production shut down, now is also a great time to dive into some international cinema. If you watch this video wondering what happens when writers lose their careers, may I suggest the British film We Need to Talk About Kevin, a film about a woman who puts her career aside to become a mother. Or maybe you were most interested in peeking behind the curtain of Hollywood, in which case, may I suggest Los Angeles Plays Itself, a documentary about how TV and film have mythologized the city. Or maybe the whole video left you depressed, and you want to watch a super uplifting and definitely not depressing film like Melancholia. But where could I possibly find all these amazing suggestions? You might be asking your screen. Well, let me introduce you to this video's sponsor, Mubi, a curated streaming service dedicated to elevating great cinema from all around the globe. It is an incredible collection of high-quality cinema. From iconic directors to emerging auteurs, there is always something new to discover. The hand-selected curation will take you across the globe, and all of the movies I just recommended are on Mubi. You can try Mubi free for 30 days at mubi.com/skipintro. That's mubi.com/skipintro for a whole month of great cinema for free. And if you are still somehow watching this video, thank you so much. Thanks for watching. Please share, like, subscribe, do the YouTube things. This was a shorter video, but I do a lot more long-form research stuff, and if you want to support that kind of stuff, like Copaganda or my videos on Abbott Elementary and Jon Stewart, you can support this channel on Patreon. Patreon's cool. On Patreon, you get access to monthly TV reviews. My second channel, Lil Skippies, which is just for patrons. We do mailbags over there, you get early access, and it's just a fun time. So, you know, think about that. Or you can just watch another video. That's also really useful. Just keep watching me. Keep watching, keep watching, keep watching, keep watching. Never stop. Never stop watching. Content, it never ends! Ah!